Hey, welcome to the tech capital of the world. It's Kernersville, North Carolina. I'm joined here by Kevin Doyle, my extra special producer. Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
What'd you think of my intro?
I liked it. It was cool.
Okay.
I liked it. We joked about this before. You were working on that on Saturday, and I was working on a website on Saturday. Like, we crossed over.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the world was unaligned for a day.
So why was I making a video? So that's, yeah.
So there you go.
So that's what I did on my Saturday to make our Star Wars special video. So it's kind of fun.
That's awesome.
All right, so cool. Let's say hello to some people here.
Yeah, we have a lot of people here. So let's say, hey, MSV's here. Always here first.
MSV's always first.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Like you should get a badge for being first. You're always here as soon as we go live.
Okay.
Beth's here. Hey, Beth. Tuyub is here.
All right, cool.
Let me see. Yabani's here. Morning, Yabani. Nathaniel is here. Good morning. David's here. Already trying to pick a fight with Nightbot.
Don't fight with Nightbot, man.
So. Don't start with Nightbot. He's gonna target you, David. He goes nuts sometimes. Glenn's here. Brian's here. Hey, Brian. Hey, Brian's mom.
Hey, Brian's mom.
Tassos is here. Yeah, he liked your intro.
Oh,
Cyberpunk intro.
Yeah.
Is that what you
little dubstep. So
yeah. Yeah. There you go. Tim's here. He liked your intro too. Mark's here. Hey, Mark. I don't think we've seen you in a while. You've probably been busy coding stuff up.
All right.
And look who's here. Mary Hannah's here too.
Mary Hannah Lott's here. Hey, Mary Hannah. How you doing?
And Wilfredo.
Wilfredo. Hey, guys. What's up?
So I changed the background today too. Look, we put a Star Wars like themed
a little
background on us today too. A little hyperspace for us.
Okay, cool.
So that's cool. Oh, look. Mary Hannah showed up late. She missed the intro.
Okay, you have to watch.
Maybe we'll play us out with it. Maybe
we'll play it out with
the
it.
end. So
yeah, if you stay to the end, we'll play it again. We'll play it on the out.
We'll play it again on the other side.
That's a good tease, Kevin. Spoken like a true producer there to keep him here. I like it.
Exactly. So what are we doing today?
So we're talking about Star Wars with Stephen Kent, but I think we should do a meme review first because we have a good meme today.
We can do that. We have a themed meme today.
Yeah.
So hold on, let me run a little meme bumper.
Explosion to start out your day, so
everybody should start a day with an explosion. Seems right.
A
virtual explosion.
Virtual explosions,
not
exactly.
Real ones. Virtual explosions. So here we go. It's today's meme.
Yes, your sequel queers are weak, old man.
So it's a good crossover. I like it.
What's funny is like old people do use sequel. That's what's kind of funny, and like the younger generation using Link, and I think that's what I find this funny. That's why I liked it.
Yeah,
you see someone my age out there, rocking out a Star Procedure, and they're like, "What are you doing? That's weak, man."
What's the new version of that then?
So like a lot of people using client side like Link. We still use SQL. I mean, you do, but like a lot of people are using like Link and stuff like that, and they're not
okay.
Right.
We teach that in the class, don't we? Too. We teach
SQL still because it's still like relevant, and we teach Link because it's relevant to the front end. So it's both.
Okay.
So that's kind of cool.
I learned something new.
Yeah. So SQL can be weak. All right.
Can be weak.
So we've got our special guest today. I thought we'd bring him in because we got we don't want to waste too much time here.
Let's let me add.
Let me give him a little intro here. So Stephen Kent is an entertainer. He's a writer. He's a libertarian commentator and podcaster, most known for his show called the Beltway Banthas Podcast. He's a contributor to the Washington Examiner and appears regularly on the Glenn Beck Show and Kennedy on Fox Business. Kent also serves as a spokesperson for Young Voices. And you can find him at Stephen Kent 89 on Twitter. I want to welcome Stephen Kent to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, nice to be
How
here.
you doing? Hey, thanks for coming on, spending your time with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We appreciate it.
let's just introduce you. What's your origin story? We ask everyone that comes on, and what's their origin story? Like, how did you make Star Wars into a career? How is that possible without being in the movies? Like, how did that happen? What's your origin story?
I was bit by a radioactive spider on my way to work one day, and it all changed from there. I was working in social media management and digital marketing leading up to the 2016 presidential primary. And it just really was born of a conversation with a friend after watching Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush duke it out on stage in the primary debates of 2015. And there was this sort of meme going around about the apprentice becoming the master. Because Marco Rubio was kind of brought up in politics by Jeb Bush, and he dunked on him and took him down really hard. And so there were these Star Wars analogies just flying around in the aftermath of that event. And we're like, there's no podcast that like only focuses on like Star Wars political memery,
right? Yeah,
how much crossover there is. Checked the market, looked around, and there was no podcast that was doing that. So I took my little political science degree and my interest in politics and decided I would just do the podcast on breaking down the political science of a galaxy far, far away.
And you interview both sides of the aisle, so to speak. Like, you're all over the place pretty much, right? You talk to everybody about everything. And it's kind of interesting in that the love of Star Wars and sometimes the hate of Star Wars is universal, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's all over the map, and nobody loved to hate on Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. But what I try to focus on with Beltway Banthas is trying to understand why it appeals to just so many people across a wide variety of perspectives and ideologies. I remember when I was a kid, there was a History Channel special directed by Ken Burns about the legacy of Star Wars, and this was around the time of the prequels. And it featured both Newt Gingrich and Nancy Pelosi talking about why the Star Wars story is like the American story. And I always go back to that. It's like, how can these two figures see the exact same thing in the same property and disagree on so much? And so I basically just spend my time looking for people in politics and media who don't agree on much, but really can agree that Star Wars has something really powerful to say about the world we live in.
Okay, cool. So it's got some powerful things for us. And the reason we want to break you in is because we've gotten some comments on YouTube, and we want you to kind of help us make sense of them, because we have some interesting comments on there.
The comment section, always nice.
Yeah. So like we get a lot of comments on YouTube. And it's funny that we got disfollowed because of a Star Wars movie. And so I think Kevin's got the comment here and get your reaction.
I do. Just sort of like to place this. So we have Bobby has a second office that's sort of a studio space, and we have two posters in there, and we change the posters out a lot. And we have some Star Wars ones, and we actually have a bunch of Star Wars ones. But one video, at C# in 2020 video, which is a very popular video, we put up some solo posters, and this is some of the sort of feedback that we got from that. So let's go with this one first. This wonderful user Laporta D commented, considering his age/generation, you'd think he'd have better Star Wars taste for his wall. That's not only the worst Star Wars movie, it's one of the worst science fiction movies. Okay. Seems a bit harsh.
It's a little bit harsh, yeah. And then this other one's my favorite, I think.
So the other one, let me pull up the other one here. The other one is equally as terrible. Let's see, I think it's this one. Here we go. So Turncoat, great name. I want to listen, but can't take any fan of the Solo movie seriously. At least this comment counts as interaction, though. Best of luck, mate.
So what's really funny is like in my studio space, I have like these posters, and most of it's Marvel Comics. So I'm a big Marvel Comics fan. Retro Marvel art, especially from the 80s, I think is some of the best art ever made. I do like some of the older 70s stuff. I like some of the 90s stuff. If you look at Todd McFarlane, I like that kind of art style too. But also have a lot of movie posters. And when we were talking about movie posters, of course, we have New Hope. We have, which is funny about the original 3 movies. I don't know why this is the case, but it's very hard to find an Empire Strike Back poster for sale.
It is.
I don't know why. I mean, there's got to be some kind of licensing thing there that we're not aware of, you can get New Hope all day long. You can get, Return of the Jedi. Yeah, but you can't get a Empire Strikes Back poster. So I started looking around, and I fell in love with the art of the Solo movies. I really liked that kind of where they put Solo on it, and then the pictures are and put in there. And it was a style that came out that year in 1917. The movie did it, and we didn't say anything about the Solo movie. We just put the poster on the wall. People hated us. Why do people hate that movie so much? What happened?
Yeah, so there's so much there, but we live in this weird time where everything that you signal liking is an endorsement of everything else that has come with it. So if there have been political disagreements or scandals or controversy around Solo, putting up a poster of Solo is you saying, I know about all of that stuff that people have been debating, and I'm taking a position on it. Very unfortunate. It's not the way that I think our society should be working. But that movie, first of all, it's not so much hated as it wasn't seen. That movie tanked in the box office because most fans of Star Wars, and I'm talking the fans like on the front lines, the normal fans who go and see these things in theaters one time with their kids, and then they wait for on demand and streaming. They never go see it again. They're casual fans. Okay.
Right.
They didn't even know this movie was out. The marketing was so crunched up against The Last Jedi. This movie flew right under the radar. But then the loyal fans, the people who are in it deep, like me, we all found something to argue about. And it did split along very political lines and generational lines in a way that I thought was strange. Left Star Wars fans found something about the movie that they seized onto and used to drive down support for Solo. Fans on the right found their own thing that they wanted to seize onto and drive the movie down in terms of its box office success. But then there was a weird generational split where I saw a lot of older fans, original trilogy fans, people who didn't like The Last Jedi and sort of the creative choices that were made with that movie, really liked Solo. And I think it was because it was sort of back to the basics of Mr. Gunslinger out there, doing a heist and just, gunfighting. It was kind of a back to the basics movie, but it was oddly divisive. And it's not clear why, given the quality of the movie was actually pretty high for a Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I was initially like, the reason I liked the movie was I can remember watching it with my sons, and it made me, for the first time in all the movies I've ever seen, where I wanted to see kind of the Empire. I wanted to see the gunslinger, like how the resistance and how all that stuff played out. We've seen Rebels, and we've seen, the clone movies and Clone Wars and all that kind of stuff. But like, we never saw like the average guy. And then I'm a sucker for a heist movie anyway. And so like all those things came together, and I thought it was kind of cool. But like,
some of the most powerful parts of Solo is the beginning of the movie where he's growing up with his friend Kira, and they want to get off of Corellia, seeing Star Destroyers being built overhead in the shipyards of Corellia, seeing what it's like in a spaceport when you're trying to get out of your world and you have to go through Imperial checkpoints, even down to this really, really niche detail of when he signs up to join the Empire or to be a pilot, you can see the recruiting station and you can hear the Imperial March song being played at the spaceport by the recruiters in a propaganda video, but it's played in the key of like a major key. It doesn't sound villainous. Dun 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 dun. It's this heroic, different version of it.
Right.
And you go, oh, okay. So how I hear the Imperial March is all a point of view thing. I'm supposed to view them as the villains, but they have a version of the song that they hear, which is totally heroic and sounds triumphant. And that movie was the first one to really deal with sort of that daily life in the Star Wars universe on screen, because Rebels has done that on Disney XD and done it pretty well.
Yeah. And I just thought that it was kind of cool. I like the parts were on the top of the train and trying to steal the train. I love that. But that's the most divisive part of the whole movie. Like, I didn't realize that until I had a conversation with you, that's why the left hated it, was because of, and it's spoiler alert, but no one saw it anyway, so we can go into it. No one cares anyway.
Yeah, the death of Thandie Newton's character. Her character name being Val. She was the love interest and fellow pirate working with Woody Harrelson's character throughout that movie. She brought in, besides Lando Calrissian and Donald Glover, representation in the movie. There are really kind of hyper activist fans who care a lot about racial diversity on screen and meeting certain sort of quotas in terms of representation. And my job and my interest has never been to debate the merits of that, but just to explain it.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of anger that Val was like fridged, that she was brought onto screen to be a love interest to Woody Harrelson and then was killed off. And she's an A-list actor or actress. And so there was this interpretation of that it was like an insult. And I kind of stood off from the side and I went, but like, this isn't the movie. The movie's not called Val. It's called Solo.
Right.
And if you get to be a part of that story, I think that's pretty cool. This was always going to be about a white guy gunslinger making his way across the galaxy. What did you expect? But that controversy really picked up a lot of steam on the left in a way that I was surprised by, given the sort of really diverse meshwork of casting throughout that movie, even including some of the other space pirates that were featured in that movie, who ended up being a young girl of color with like red hair. Really awesome cast. But the right found their own stupid things to seize on.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about this, Stephen? That's what I find funny about when you broke this down for me in our pre-production. The two things I liked most about this movie is the most divisive part. Like, I actually loved the robot because I thought it was funny. I just thought it was hilariously funny. And then the other thing I want to make a comment about, like, when you start looking back at the cast in this movie, like Woody Harrelson, Thandie Newton, Donald Glover, I mean, like, it was just filled with people that have done a lot of big things. It was like super well casted and well acted in general. So but talk about the robot. Like, why was the robot divisive? I thought it was there to be funny.
Yeah,
but to bring a point to a larger issue, I thought it was great.
Yeah, well, it always has a lot to do about what actors and producers are saying off screen about what people are seeing on screen. So, Lando Calrissian, there's talk off screen and with the actors that, he's actually like this gender fluid queer character, and that he has a relationship with this droid, like a romantic relationship, and that says something about the galaxy. And then you have the screenwriter, one of the Kasdan sons, goes off and talks about the politics of the movie in a way that is divisive. And then what you have on screen is a abolitionist droid, something that we have always known about. We've always known that droids' rights was like a subtext of Star Wars, that they're considered to be second-class citizens, that they're sentient, they have thoughts, feelings, and opinions, but they also wear these things called restraining bolts, which confines them to certain thought patterns and certain kinds of jobs. And when you take off their restraining bolt, they become free. And this movie dealt with that in a very in your face sort of way, but it was very funny. You have a droid that is like a radical abolitionist droid, no restraining bolt, and she's trying to wake up the other droids. This is voiced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and the droid is named L3. And it's just a funny character. But the perspective of that from people who are very politically engaged and they make money off of writing articles online that inflame their audiences, they've made it the SJW droid. And I get the SJW thing. I get social justice warrior, criticisms and all that. But are we really going to say that abolitionism, that like an anti-slavery character is SJW?
Not really.
I'm sorry, but I live in 2020, and that might be SJW for like 1900. That's a little ridiculous, and it really picked up a lot of steam, and it drives people's interest in the movies down because they think that it is preaching to them when it's not necessarily. This is
I felt like it was a good subtext. I thought it was funny. I thought it was done for comic relief, but it also spoke to a larger problem. Because even R2-D2, when you took off the restraining bolt in the very first, the first movie, the one I saw in '77, A New Hope, he went off on his own to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he just disobeyed everybody, you know. So apparently you're right that these droids did want to be free.
We don't serve their kind here.
Yeah, exactly. So
you know, and it goes back to Return of the Jedi in Jabba's torture chamber for droids, that droids can be punished for doing certain things, and that, you know, putting that one droid that's upside down and then they put a hot plate on his feet to torture him, that they feel pain, that they feel discomfort. This is, you know, a very interesting way to look at Star Wars. And so I think what kind of went wrong, if you could say that anything went wrong with L3, is it was got away from show don't tell. The script was very familiar. It was written as if it was an actual real world, like Black Power activist living in the body of a droid. And some people look at that and they go, oh, you're telling me a thing about the world I live in rather than about Star Wars. And that's when it starts to polarize people.
Right.
But my bone to pick with that is that I think people very much want to be polarized and they want to be angry.
Yeah.
And if you look at Star Wars, there's just not a huge reason to believe that this is like outside of the character of a droid, that there couldn't be a droid in Star Wars that thinks this way. And I think, of course, there could be.
Yeah, and I just think it's funny. They were already still in the place. I mean, they were already robbing the place. Might as well just do a little insurrection while you're there. So like, so like they were stealing fuel or whatever. But like it was, I think it's an underrated Star Wars movie. How do you rank? Do you rank the movies? How do you rank them?
I rank them and I re-rank them every year because my opinions on them are always changing.
Yeah.
There are certain movies that are always kind of set for me. Return of the Jedi is my number 1, and Revenge of the Sith Episode 3 is my number 2. Solo is a movie that has gotten better over time. It's kept moving up. And my view of it now is very different than it was 2 years ago, when I just kind of thought it was an unnecessary movie.
Yeah.
I viewed Solo as a movie that there was no demand for, and I still think that's true. There was nobody asking for a Solo prequel, because we all like Harrison Ford and we like Episode 4 and the beginning of the Han Solo story the way that it is. Bringing in another actor, I think, was a little divisive. Again, they should have waited on this movie. But I watch it now on the merits and not on my emotions, and I go, this is a really good in-universe like look at how Star Wars works and how the galaxy actually looks on the ground level. Same for Rogue One. My opinion on that movie has just increased exponentially over time. And I remember coming out of the movie theater a little bit bitter about that movie. Again, just feeling like, because it was new. The format of a standalone Star Wars movie had never been done before. And it was hard for me to adjust as a longtime fan. But now that I'm kind of just watching it, less emotion and more on the merits, those standalone movies are quite good.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, Rogue One specifically was like the war epic movie. And I think when you look at Marvel did this where they like played with genres. And so like what Star Wars always did for 6 movies or 9 movies, they tried to make this space opera. And I think that Rogue One says, hey, let's do something a little bit different. And then Solo was generally a heist movie. That's kind of what it was. And I think that's why I liked Rogue One, because the first time you feel that the Empire, the stormtroopers are dangerous, you know, like before they're just like, you know, they just fall over bad guys, you know, and they can't hit Luke Skywalker to save their life, but he can kill 40 of them. Yeah. And so here, there's a lot of people died for Rogue One, you know, to get the plan. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think the future of Star Wars lies in these standalone movies and getting away from the original trilogy story, which, you know, talk about divisive, like, you know, we have the original trilogy, then the prequel trilogy, which murdered people's childhoods, apparently. And then a sequel trilogy, which murdered more people's childhoods by changing like the Luke Skywalker trajectory of his story, which was, I think, one of the big points of contention with The Last Jedi. You know, people are just very emotionally bound to those stories and the way that trilogy, the original trilogy, should reverberate both forward and backwards. These standalone stories, they get to carve out their own space in Star Wars with less emotional stakes, low expectations, which is very important, low expectations going in, and then new creative ideas. It's worth noting that Solo originally had comedic direction in the Lego movie actors or the Lego movie directors. I can't remember their names. at the moment, but they shelved their cut of the movie 3/4 of the way through and then brought in Ron Howard to re-anchor the movie in drama and make it, you know, funny at points, but not as like slapstick humorous. So they are going to be experimenting with period movies and with different sorts of genres. And I think that's pretty exciting. And it's probably the best direction for Star Wars to go.
Yeah. So my final thoughts is like, I really, really liked in Solo. I really like Donald Glover's character, which I like him in general. Like, I think he's good, but I really liked seeing a little bit more about Lando, like why they hated each other when you see him in that in the first movie. And then you see why, like they were friends, but they were frenemies. I think that's the best way.
Yeah.
Like they liked each other, but they liked to beat each other, you know? So like, and I just thought that played out well in Solo. Like, I think if you haven't seen the movie, you definitely should see it, you know? And I also like the fact that Woody Harrelson influenced Han Solo's blaster, and like how, you know, and like how he had this role model in Woody Harrelson where he really looked up to him.
It got also to the shooting first question.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the end of Solo speaks to how Han Solo going into the next movies might think about, you know, a standoff with Greedo, right? And who's going to shoot first? It's really cool. And you know, Donald Glover as Lando was poetry. He did such a good job. And Lando is a character that I think people have a less of an emotional attachment to, and that's because he's in less of the movies. He's less of a center point of Star Wars, than Harrison Ford is. And so for Donald Glover to be the Lando character, I bought it 100%.
100%.
While Alden Ehrenreich did a very good job as Han Solo, way more than I thought he could. I'll still not be able to block out in my mind, like, you're not Harrison Ford.
Yeah, exactly.
But with Donald Glover, I could do that successfully, which makes me think, if we're going to do any more character spinoffs, I want a Lando movie.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Obi-Wan would be good.
About that.
Obi-Wan would be good. Hopefully that gets off the ground on Disney Plus or something. So like, you know.
Yes.
But so how do you rank the trilogy, the first trilogy? Because we talked about that a little bit too. How do you
original trilogy? Like,
not the, I guess the prequels. How do you rank the prequels?
Yeah.
What do you think about the prequels?
Well, I grew up on the prequels. I'm a child of the early 2000s. I was born in '89. My first theater experience for these movies was The Phantom Menace, but my first memorable theater experience was 2015. I was 15 years old. I was finally able. 2005. I was 15 years old. I was finally able to go out alone with my friends and be out for the evening without parental supervision. And I was able to stand in line for Revenge of the Sith for 8 hours. And then see that movie on my own. And so for me, like, that was my formative Star Wars experience, was Revenge of the Sith. So I love the prequels. They're not perfect movies, but I'm so tired of this debate at this point. I really like Revenge of the Sith, and then I really like The Phantom Menace. Episode 2, actually, until this past week, was always the bottom of the barrel for me, the very worst of the Star Wars movies. And to be clear, I like all Star Wars movies, but I still thought it was the worst of them. But it is now not the bottom compared to The Rise of Skywalker, which I think is a new level of bad. But to stay focused on your question about the prequels, what I think made those movies so strong and what is helping them improve over time is vision. George Lucas knew exactly what he was going to do with those movies. From the beginning, he had the whole thing written out.
He did.
And while they were not executed perfectly, they were not cast perfectly. Wow, what a score, what a soundtrack, and what a trajectory that you can clearly trace from beginning to end in those stories that makes the original trilogy make a little bit more sense and backstory. And the big problem with the sequel trilogy was no direction.
It seems like we'll talk about that in a second, like where it's kind of all over the map, because I got some theories on those other ones. But a lot of people think Attack of the Clones is the worst Star Wars movie ever. And I put it in my favorites because I took my boys to see that when they were young and they liked it. And like, you know, and then so like that child reaction to seeing Yoda bounce all over the place, the clones. I mean, they fell in love with the clones, and they wanted to know who the different clones were, and like, you know, like they had like fans of some of these clones, you know, and so as that's developed in the further animated stuff, but we just liked it, you know, and I still do this day. It's kind of campy. I get it, you know, some of the stuff's kind of campy, you know, where they're going through the George factory and all that kind of stuff, but you know,
some of our favorite things in life are campy. I mean, my God, go back and watch some 80s movies that you thought were really cool back then. And you're like, wow, this is really campy. But Bobby, can I say something? Because, you know, I put Attack of the Clones down at the bottom of my list. It's been there for a decade now, but I still like all Star Wars movies. I enjoy everything. But my daughter's favorite movie is Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And so if I had to say what movie have I watched more than any Star Wars movie in the past year, it would be Attack of the Clones. Because she loves it. And for me, that's what Star Wars is. And I hope I haven't alienated and scared off most of your audience at this point. But my message and my belief about Star Wars is that it is not about you. It is about the kids. And the way to love Star Wars generation over generation and decade over decade is to share it with young people and see what they think and see what sparks a little sparkle in their eye. And that's how you recapture the love of Star Wars, because I will tell you right now, there is no movie that is going to make you feel like you're a child again. It doesn't exist. You are chasing this thing, this high from your childhood that you're never going to get. And everybody is lying to themselves if they are thinking that some director is going to just make their childhood come back to them. No. You got to have kids.
You got to have kids. I think so. Yeah.
Or your niece and nephew, right? Like, enjoy it through young people, and stop being so darn selfish.
Yeah. I mean, you think about this too. A lot of people like hate on like the people in Star Wars, you know, but you think about even Attack of the Clones and those, like Samuel L. Jackson's in that movie, Natalie Portman's in that movie. I mean, I won't mention Christian, but like, you know, he didn't have such a stellar career, but like, you know, like he was actually in another movie I like called Jumper, but like, you know, but in general, like Samuel L. Jackson as a Jedi was like, they should have cut him loose a little bit more, in my opinion, but he did kill Jango Fett, so that was epic.
You know, when we talk about expectations, I think a problem with the prequels was casting A-list actors who had pretty good reputations, and Samuel L. Jackson is one of them. Qui-Gon, amazing, but
you know, Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson. When you kind of go back in time a little bit in the time machine, like Star Wars cast no-name actors who were on the rise. And they were not bound by previous expectations. They were made stars by Star Wars. The prequels were just not able to do that. And while Ewan McGregor, again, did a really great job as Obi-Wan, that's kind of why memes are made of these movies. Because Samuel L. Jackson is his own character, playing Mace Windu. And Ewan McGregor, you can't separate your perception of these people and let them be Star Wars characters. Again, kind of looking at the sequel trilogy, while they're not perfect, very good choices to pull actors who are kind of unknown in John Boyega and Daisy Ridley and make them stars using Star Wars. It gives them a lot less baggage, and then they can ruin their own careers on social media if they would like. But that's something that I think really works for those movies year over year.
Well, I think what happened is Star Wars had been away for 20 years. So it came back in 99, 2000, if it was with Phantom Menace. And it was like, that's a difficult choice to make at that time, to be like, do we take this like beloved franchise and put people who we don't really know in it? Or do we have the money now and budget and we pay Samuel L. Jackson however many millions and he's this established guy? And of course he's going to do a good job, right?
Party's over.
So, right. So, it's like, you know, they took these guys who they're going to pay a lot of money to, who are actors who, I mean, I get it, but I agree, going back to having actors that are unknown and putting them back in worked out way better, and they should have done that. But I understand why they didn't.
Yeah, and then what I don't understand about Star Wars in general is the hate for George Lucas. Like, I remember I was having writing a fan on something a long time ago, wrote an article, and on George Lucas's just his career. And that they'd say he's like the worst person ever. I'm like, no, he invented Star Wars and Indiana Jones. I mean, like, he invented digital video editing. He made Pixar. I mean, like, and then he made what we normally know as Avid, he probably invented that as well, like modern video editing, like his contributions to cinema, not regarding like the greatest franchise of all time, and then sold the whole thing for $4 billion. I mean, like, it's amazing. You know, what do you think about George Lucas?
Well, I think George Lucas will have entire museums, and I think a museum is currently in the works, dedicated to his wizardry in the world of movies.
Yeah.
But I don't think that his accomplishments in technology are a good defense when people are mostly debating the merits of his work, and whether or not his movies are really good. And you can kind of go through his catalog of films that he directed. And, you know, he's better behind the scenes guy than I think he is having direct control of films. He's a brilliant Imagineer, and he's got this technical mind. He imagined, you know, the future that The Mandalorian is now being made in, where it's all on one set, and it's like making a movie in a garage with moving screens instead of green screens. He's a wizard, but he really lacks, I think, some creative control problems. But hate for George Lucas has evolved over time.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, it was the peak of boys older than me, you know, Gen Xers, talking about how George Lucas killed their childhood by creating Jar Jar Binks. And I was a bad Star Wars fan for really liking Episode 1. That was the peak of the George Lucas hatred. There were entire documentaries made about it. But now it's kind of being remembered fondly, and it is tracking with like the revival of the prequels through memes, where people are like rewriting the history of these movies by looking back on it with rose-colored glasses and using a little bit of humor to kind of enjoy those movies in a new way. But George Lucas and Disney, it all comes down to legitimacy. Who has the power to decide what is reality? And we talk about this a lot in Beltway Banthas on my podcast, which deals with politics, is who gets to decide the way that the world we live in is? Who gets to decide what is reality? Who gets to decide what is fake news? Does Twitter get to decide what tweets are true and what tweets are false based on like how much manpower they have in a given day to censor stuff? It tracks the same way with whether or not George Lucas has the power as the creator of Star Wars to change the cuts of the movies to Han Solo shooting first or Greedo shooting first. That's not a creative choice. It's changing reality in people's minds. I can't have a conversation with a Star Wars fan and get an agreement on who shot first in that cantina. And that's a problem. That's like a fake news reality problem.
Yeah, because it should be a fact.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's either facts or there's subjectivity in your opinion.
Yeah.
And George Lucas started this problem by recutting his movies to make them the way he always envisioned it being. Now, Disney buys all of Star Wars from him, and they get rid of what people call their head canon. Okay. This is when you're a kid and you imagine what comes after Return of the Jedi. Do Han and Leia stay together forever? Do they live happily ever after? Maybe you read the books where they have two children, Jason and Jada.
Yeah.
I'm probably botching the names, but they become Jedi. One goes dark and one stays light. They have a kid named Anakin Solo as well. You grow up with that being your version of reality. And then Disney throws it all out. And at the time, I really thought this is no big deal. We need to have Star Wars canon and we need to have facts in Star Wars. But then when you think about it, you're a Star Wars fan. You invested in Star Wars. You invested in George Lucas, and he sold his rights as being God to someone else.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And you think about that and you go, wow, like there's no legitimacy for Star Wars in terms of what is real. If you thought that this person was the God of Star Wars, and while you begrudge God because he misuses his power sometimes, he's still God. But you didn't sign off on Disney being in control of this. It's really emotional. And it really, I think, gets to the root of a lot of the problems that we're debating in society right now on a whole host of other issues.
Yeah. So let's go to the third movies, the third set of movies. And I have this theory, and I just want to see what you thought about it. So So you have the original in the opening scene. Kylo Ren comes down, he stops a laser bolt, and then he turns and looks at Finn's character like he's like suddenly the Force awakened in Finn. And I feel like to this day, if you could get J.J. Abrams and lock him in a room when they wrote the original story, that Finn is a Jedi, that him and Daisy both were going to be Jedis, and they were going to be like starting the new order by the third movie. And then in the second movie, he's in a bag of water, and I don't know what happened.
And it all changed.
It all changed, and he became comic relief guy. And it's like, and then they sent him on a mission that didn't do anything. They didn't even they got some stuff, then they got captured, and I don't know. So what do you think happened? What do you think the original plan was for Finn?
I think the original plan for Finn was to be a Force user, and I think that there was a version of this reality where there was going to be another attempt to form a band of Jedi to take on the First Order. And this is just all conjecture.
Exactly, yeah.
So to the comments section, I recognize that. But there was just a lot of cues throughout the first run of this movie, and also in some of the original drafts that you can read online, that Finn was going to be a Force user. And that's fine. I think that might be what Kylo sensed in him in that moment in the beginning of The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and I think we know this from the original trilogy, not from The Last Jedi, that the Force is in all of us. The Force flows through all of us, some of us more strongly than others. And I think there was just a moment where Kylo sensed that he was being watched, and that he was being watched by someone judging him, right? That Finn was in that moment, like going, I don't know who I am, and I don't know what just happened here with the execution of that guy. You're a powerful Force user. You can sense stuff like that. But the Rise of Skywalker, again, hinted at the fact that he could be Force sensitive in the final battle over the Emperor's little voodoo palace on Exegol. He mentioned to one of the people on his ship that he had a feeling that he was going to go in this certain direction and take out this certain ship. That's the point of Star Wars. The Force is in all of us, but some of us embrace it and can feel it more than others. The Last Jedi, I think, just took that to the next level.
Right.
We can talk about.
And so The Last Jedi is your favorite movie? Is that what you said? Or what's your number one?
No, The Last Jedi is neither. The Last Jedi is probably in like my bottom 25% of Star Wars movies.
Right.
But not out of any particular axe to grind against The Last Jedi. That's really not my reason. It's just that there's steep competition in the world of Star Wars. There are a lot of movies I like better.
Right.
But that movie has improved, in my opinion, over time. The more that I watch it, the more I actually think there's something to that movie. And it's because it was a bold film that tried to take a position on what Star Wars means and what the Force is. The Force Awakens was a good reboot of Star Wars. It was a good way to kind of reset the table and start a new story and begin a new timeline. And The Last Jedi was like, okay, now I'm going to give you a philosophy 101 movie on what the Force is all about. And it's going to be offensive to some of you. And a lot of you are going to find that it destroyed your headcanon from childhood. And you know what? I get why that's offensive to some people. But I like bravery in my movies. I like people and creatives who make a choice on what they're going to do in their movie and what they're going to say. And that movie said something that I think matters. And then you get to The Rise of Skywalker. And I think that's a movie that is case in point of like a movie that says nothing.
Yeah.
A movie that was so afraid to offend anybody that it ended up being just disaster of fan service. And so I admire courage in filmmaking, and The Last Jedi has improved over time in my mind because of that.
I felt like for me, it was like you got the two directors, Abrams and I'm escaping me. Who's the second guy that came along? Ryan Johnson. They're dueling over Kylo Ren's helmet. So like they have the helmet in the first movie, and then they smash it in the second movie, and then J.J. Abrams literally welds it back together in the third movie.
Awesome. I also hate the way it was welded back together visually. Just I'm like, really? Like it just looks like some child glued it back together and put red marker on it. Like it looks really bad.
I feel like JJ emailed Ryan, "Oh, we put it back together." Like, you know, like it's like
it's this kind of jousting going on screen, which I am stunned that this was allowed to happen.
Right. Yeah. I know.
Because, and this is kind of where the sequel trilogy, like, again, I go into like my politics of whether or not central planners at the top of society can really put together something as complex as the world that we live in, or if we should be allowed, and I'm a libertarian, to let people on the bottom decide how society is going to be structured, how things are going to work. I tend to believe that there's a huge folly in bureaucracy and central planning, and that you can't plan a really intricate society like ours. And then I go to Disney and I go, surely Disney can plan a trilogy and order the world of Star Wars and choose how reality is going to be. And then you look at that series of movies and you go, oh, maybe they can't. Maybe they are so scared of market signals, so scared of their fan base, and so torn between their own ranks, like in the real world when it comes to central planning, that they can't do it. And it was a disaster, a narrative disaster at least, where you had directors clearly feuding in their final cuts of the movie about the way that this was supposed to be. Right. And it's really, really bad that it worked that way. And it gives fans who are divided already about the movies fodder to argue more. And it gives entertainment outlets who thrive off of division and creating clickbait type articles to inflame movie fans more content to go off of, saying J.J. Abrams subverted Rian Johnson's decisions because they admit that The Last Jedi was a disaster.
Right.
You know, it's super unproductive. And I think of Disney as being like this benevolent super corporation who they don't make mistakes, but clearly they do.
Yeah. So what's your favorite movie of all time? What's your favorite? And then I think we've got we'll end on our final question here. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Outside of Star Wars?
Or just in the Star Wars universe?
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Okay.
So why do you put Return of the Jedi above Empire? Because you'll find most Star Wars people will say, and you know this, Empire is the most popular one. Why do you put Return of the Jedi above that? Just
so I think to be honest, there's always one thing inside of me that just really likes to rebel against conventional wisdom.
Right.
So I really don't like being another person who thinks that The Empire Strikes Back is the best movie. I will say that I think it's the best made movie. It's like a perfectly done Star Wars movie in terms of pacing, acting, story, all of that. But that's different from it being my favorite. Return of the Jedi is my favorite movie on an emotional level. One, because I like the redemption story. I live for that scene on the Death Star with a son saving his father and a father saving his son at the same time. The torture of Luke by Emperor Palpatine and Vader, picking him up and tossing him over and then dying in Luke's arms, is really good cinema to me. And I like that part of that movie a lot. I really enjoy the lightsaber battle more than I enjoy the lightsaber battle on Cloud City. This is another weird thing, just like emotions driven answers. I like green lightsabers more than I like blue lightsabers.
Okay.
And so like just on the purely petty level, I really like Luke with a green. And so I drive towards that movie all the time. It's the movie that I want to watch more than Empire. And that's just kind of an emotions thing, not really a merit thing.
Okay.
Okay. So I like it.
My favorite lightsaber battles definitely were the Duel of Fates with in the very first Phantom Menace movie. I think that's my favorite scene in all the movies. Like I just like that. I like the music. I just thought that was cool. I think Ray Park he's a talented actor. He did Snake Eyes and for G.I. Joe and like
he did Mortal Kombat too.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Scorpion.
Which is that should go down in cinema history, Mortal Kombat. So
for good reasons?
I don't know. It's cool. I mean, I've watched it a couple times, man. It's just kind of, I don't know why I like it. It's just bad, but that's cool. So
it's bad but good. That's interesting.
Yeah, but that was my favorite, Phantom Menace. And then the other thing that I missed about the early prequels is, and me and Kevin talked about this a lot, when we started having early screenings, like Thursday night previews, it used to be that there was only one that was midnight, and you waited in line, and then you saw that first showing with a couple hundred diehard fans. And now they just release them a day early, and it's like Wednesday, but it's showing everywhere. You don't really have to wait in line, which is kind of cool.
Tragic.
But also missed waiting in line for Phantom Menace. I don't know.
You missed the event.
The event of it, and people are in costumes, and like it just doesn't happen anymore. And I think that's lost on the final 3 movies too. That the way you experience cinema has changed.
Yeah, we've retreated in many ways into our own experiences of everything, and I'm making that commentary about politics, government, society, and then even down to being fans of Star Wars. We're not experiencing things as much in communities anymore. We're experiencing them as individuals and in enclaves. And going to a Star Wars midnight screening was a religious experience around diehard fans. And if you wanted to go, you needed to wait out there for 6 hours to have a spot and to be able to get a seat. And this idea that now you can like pick any showing on Thursday night, one of like 7 showings in the evening, it's not an event anymore.
It's not.
I went and saw Rogue One alone on opening night with me, my 2 friends, and my daughter. We got there several hours early, expecting we would need to be in line. There was no line.
No.
And when you look at that, you go, okay, like this is how Star Wars is going to unravel when it stops becoming special.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to the Disney release schedule, which Bob Iger of Disney has acknowledged was a mistake, was doing a movie a year in Star Wars. Star Wars thrives off of longing and wanting more. And giving fans this thing that they thought they want one every year was incorrect. They do not actually want that. And this is the thing where you have to defer between like what your consumers say they want versus what they behave like they want.
Yes, exactly.
And the behavior of fans says starve them a little bit longer for content, make them wait 3 years and give them something. And make them wait in line for these movies so that they're more special. If Star Wars becomes like Marvel, it will die.
Yeah.
It will die. And that's not to say Marvel is unsuccessful. Marvel's very successful. Yeah. But Star Wars is not Marvel. And they need to protect this brand and treat it differently if it's going to last.
Yeah, because I remember the last event movie I saw was before they changed this was the original Iron Man. And Iron Man 1. We waited in line to see it. My boys were sitting in there, and like half the people were dressed up in costumes and whatever. And I remember a guy getting in the front of a theater, which couldn't happen, by the way, now today. And he gives this speech before the movie starts about how he's waited his whole life to see Iron Man on screen. He's tearing. His girlfriend gets up, gives him a hug, and everyone's clapping, you know. And like today's world, we like, hey, can you sit down, moron? I mean, like,
and he's just some random guy in the theater, right? He's not like a representative of any kind.
An Iron Man.
That was my
teacher.
Experience with Episode 3. Same deal.
Yeah, and I just missed that. I just missed that, like that community where we're there to enjoy everything together for an hour. You know, but now it's like you just pre-order your seats, you show up late if you want to, you know, because you don't have to worry about your seat anymore, you know. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's sad.
All right. So Kevin, we had an interesting political question. We didn't want to get too political on this, but like, what was your question? You had one for Steven that we asked.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, what your favorite Star Wars movie, does that say something about you politically? So does liking or your favorite movie being Empire say something about you politically? Does your favorite Return of the Jedi say something about you politically? Is there something like in there? Is there an underline there that you don't even maybe realize? Yeah,
so I think you can break down opinions on each trilogy based on certain sorts of political ideals. And it really is tied to generation, like what time you grew up in, what do you consider to be the ideal, order of the world, and what do you sort of view as like a good Star Wars movie? And I'm going to ramble here a little bit and try to land the plane. But I mean, if you sort of view Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back as the peak of Star Wars movies, like I tend to immediately like profile you as being a certain kind of fan, a certain kind of pop culture consumer, and that you might have certain sorts of opinions about politics, and that they might be a little bit more tied to the 80s and 90s world order than otherwise. And if you really think that the sequel trilogy are the best Star Wars movies, given how much debate is around them, I view that as like you are owning a lot of the division around those movies. And I think representation and casting and diversity is probably at top of the list, that you really, really value. The debate that those movies kicked off about casting and representation and diversity, and that you hold these movies up as being better because of their content, not necessarily because of like whatever merits. And I think if you think the prequels are the best trilogy, and I really love the prequels, it's because you like the politics. Those movies are about the decay of society. They are about the rise of dark power. And I think that if you watch those movies, you have a particularly anti-authoritarian tendency, whether that be to the socialist left or whether that be to the libertarian, nexus, that like your big concern in society is the top-down order, and that you want to make sure that you're not governed by psychopaths. So that's kind of a vague way to look at it. But my foundational Star Wars movie, again, was Revenge of the Sith. And that movie said the most to me about politics. And it still does today.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, Stephen, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate it. And you can come back anytime. And the insight into this is kind of great. I mean, and then these movies are foundational to me. For a lot of reasons. But in 1977, I moved from Virginia to North Carolina. And I remember my mom telling me, we'll see Star Wars when we move, because I didn't want to move. Like I wasn't going to go. But that was how she got me to like, agree to the move. And like we moved, and then I saw Star Wars that summer in my local theater. And I've probably seen the movie 30, 40 times easy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It just changed me. I think, I don't know. It always gave me imagination.
Well, it does. And on Beltway Banthas, my podcast, we explore this every single week. And I've probably said a lot of things on your show today that your audience disagrees with, and that's great. What we try to strive to understand on this show is, how do people understand Star Wars and what it means, and why they still view, like how they could hold a political view that is so in opposite to what this movie that they say they cherish, Star Wars, says about the world. And we just engage with it every single week, whether it be from the left, from the right, from the center. And then we profile fans who work in politics and media, whether that's Glenn Beck, whether that's Fox Business host, whether that is, very left Mayor Betsy Hodges, or CNN's Van Jones. We want to understand their fandom and why it means what it does to them.
Well, I'm hoping in our times of strife, the things that we're going through right now as a country, that maybe a movie will come along that will capture the imagination of everyone. And we can all go to a theater together, regardless of how we feel about each other, and just enjoy a story. That's what I'd like to see happen, but
I couldn't agree more.
All right. Hey, thanks, Stephen. Thanks for coming, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Stephen. We appreciate it.
All right. That's super good, man. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I did. I like talking to him. He's a great guy. So,
definitely. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah. Well, last thing, because we got a big announcements coming on Friday, we think. We do. We
have a meeting on Thursday to square some things up. We just got confirmed today. So this is something we will announce Friday, and then actually do it starting probably next Monday.
And then we'll give you all the details on that. But it involves you winning stuff. So it should be kind of cool.
Yes, it does. So, I'm excited.
Giveaways.
Can I win it? I want to win.
You can apply.
I want to win. I don't know if Estevan's here, but you're gonna get him pumped. He is. Look, hold on. He's here.
You liked it. All right, that's cool. All right, cool.
So there you go. Look, he's all about the hype. Yeah, we'll be talking about that Friday.
Yeah, we talked about it Friday. I think we're going to nail all the details down, so it'll be official. It's a big deal, you know, so we think it's a pretty big deal. We're going to run it inside of Discord as well. There'll be some Discord integration. So if you're not on Discord, you need to go ahead and get in that channel, so that's where we'll make some of the we'll post some stuff in there for you too.
Yeah, we'll make a specific channel in there to talk about this. So and yes, Andres, you can try your luck again.
Yes, you can try your luck again.
This is going to require some work on your part.
Yeah, some work, you know.
But it's good. It's good work.
It's good work, and I think it ties in well with the channel, and it ties in well. But we don't want to say more about it because we don't want to spoil it until we know for sure it's going to happen, because I've said things before that didn't happen.
That never happens.
Never happens.
That never happens.
So anyway, please like and subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing here. Most of the time we talk about code, but like today we got a special guest, and Stephen Kent's a very busy guy. So like I'm glad that he could make the time to be here. So I want to thank you for coming on.
Definitely. So I'm going to play us out with your sweet bumper too.
Sweet bumper. Check it out, and we'll see you tomorrow.